Hello, once again, welcome to another presentation here of the Issues Room, our 6th to 9th edition, this Friday, June 24, 2022, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 11 p.m. GMT or Liberian time. We're a little late, a few minutes past 7. We're trying to set up some technical glitches we're having. In the meantime, Moses will be joining us momentarily. He has a situation on the other side in Delaware, but it's hoped that he would join us. But again, we want to welcome you, our viewers and listeners, wherever you are. We told you we'll be back here Friday with a conversation around the senatorial by-elections and whether President Weah is committed to fighting corruption in Liberia. And also, we wanted to look at, let me just go quickly to my lineup here. The opposition lawmakers who are crossing carpet, joining the CDC. What does it mean for 2023? Is it a signal that we are is in the driver's seat, or is it a charade? Well, who knows? I have my colleague and good friend and brother, a veteran Liberian journalist, former press secretary to Madam Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, Deputy Minister at the Ministry of Information, Acting Minister of the Ministry of Information, none other than, I will put the honorable since he was Minister, Mr. Jeronlimek Piah. Good evening, welcome. It's good to have you back here. Thanks for accepting our invitation. We said we'll bring you in just to have, an expert view, one who is well researched, who understands the situation trending in the country, to help us fuel this discussion, to enlighten the Liberian people. So thank you again. Welcome to the Issues Room, our 6th to 9th edition.
Thank you.
Well, as I said, Marcus will be joining us momentarily, hopefully, because the problem is beyond his control. So he will be hopefully joining us once it's resolved. But for our trending news tonight, I'm sure probably you've heard by now, the former armed forces of Liberia commanding general Moses Wright was arrested on the basis of forging his request to become an American citizen, with stories that he was never aligned to any, what you would call a fighting force with regards to abusing human rights, so forth. I'm not sure if you're following the conversation around that.
Yes, I do, but America is a great country, and sometimes the way certain things are handled raises a lot of questions about, how efficiently we can strive to that greatness that is associated with them. And I say this because I want to believe that ex-General Moses Wright has been in this country for years. And to have been granted residency here, he must have failed the R485, which asks a number of questions associated with what they're talking about. And I'm sure that after all of those processes are done, the relevant background checks and all of those things are done before you grant the person residency in the first place. So how did you have your eyes pass over those issues, and you are only now raising it at the point of him wanting to be a citizen? Because anyone who's done the R485 before, I think you know what I'm talking about, what kind of, they got yes or no questions, and many of them are associated with those kinds of things. Have you been a part of any fighting force before? Have you done this? Have you done that? Military this? All of those questions are there, and one will have to answer yes or no. But key to that is that after you answer all those questions before they even find the processes, you do fingerprint. And there, I'm sure one of the reasons for that is to do an effective background check. So how did that not happen? And you allow this man to live in this country. He's now old, 70 years old or more. And probably because he wants to be a citizen now, you come with all these issues. So I'm
But
following you.
let's discuss this a little bit, and I'm looking at it from a different perspective. I think probably, from my opinion, I could be wrong that the pathway to citizenship, especially when you apply for citizenship, maybe the background check is very rigorous, because it's now the American citizenship that you're taking on. And for you to become an American citizen, there's so much at stake. The image of the country bearing that nationality in your passport. So I'm believing that maybe to go a little more further in terms of probing deeper and so forth. Will you agree with me? It's higher than just being an ordinary resident, you know.
Yes, but in my mind, whether citizenship or residency, you got to be concerned with people you grant residency. It also has security implications for the country and those who live here. For somebody to be able to cause mayhem does not require citizenship. If I have a criminal record and you grant me residency, I don't need citizenship to cause mayhem. All right. So even if the one that has to do with citizenship is more rigorous, you still have to do an effective background search for people who you say, I agree for you to live in my country, because the implications are enormous. Especially current day America, where you see, with all the things that are happening, every day there's one mass shooting or somewhere, and all these kinds of different security situations. It doesn't matter whether it is for citizenship or just residency. You have to pay attention to who you're enabling to be citizen or a resident.
And you mentioned the fingerprinting. I think the fingerprinting aspect has to do with creating a database on this person to determine whether the person has ever committed a crime here, not outside of America, but here within America. And also,
really?
Yeah.
So I can commit crime from whence I come,
but it may not be tied to the system, though.
And they're not checking it. They're only concerned about what I've done seen in America.
What I'm saying for the fingerprinting, because the fingerprinting, that is if you were to come here as a visitor. When you come here as a visitor, you don't do fingerprinting. You just do the interview and they grant you the visa, and then you come here. And while here, you can try to change your status if you intend to stay. And at that point, when you apply, that's when they start to do the fingerprinting to make sure that they have a database on you for the future, or also to check if there's anything that existed on you prior to, applying for whatever status you want to apply for. And that's where that fingerprint biometrics database is created. But I'm just sharing that with you. But again, you're right. We think that the situation is unfortunate for General Wright, but I'm sure with the American justice system, he will have his due day in court. He probably will put a legal team together, and of course, those charges, they rather have to show evidence and proof, to bring him to book. Otherwise, it will be the same. If you look at what's his name, Thomas Weah, similar thing. He's been in America. He lived there. He went back to Liberia. He participated in the war, spokesman for the MPFL. Blah blah blah. Comes back on his same residency status. He enjoys it. He was doing well. As soon as he went for the citizenship, bam, they caught him. So that's what I'm saying. Maybe the citizenship, because if you look at the trend, then it tells me that there's a different definition as to how you become citizen and what they look for and how much depth.
Probably, and it is the affairs of their country. We don't have to argue that. I'm just saying the fact that he has lived in this country for all this while, all of a sudden you have an issue with him, doesn't make much sense to me. And there's nowhere like home. If the opportunity is provided for him to go home, he goes home. George Pole was here. I guess he had some issues. He went home. He didn't just sit there. His people elected him as a representative, irrespective of what kind of issues the American may have had with him. And he's a representative, even as we speak. I know when Tom was here, he went in and out. During the electioneering period, he went there, tried to make his presence felt. Eventually, some point in order, he came back, and then eventually he fell into that problem. But if I understand you well, you are suggesting that these things normally unfold when the whole question of wanting to be citizen comes out, which in a way will make me agree with you that maybe the checking that is done with regards to citizenship is in-depth and very rigorous. And so they may find things that they
overlooked.
Yeah, that they may not have pressed well to get when they were just granting you residency. Like you said, there's a lot attached to being an American citizen. You in a way represent the image of the country. If you're a resident, you're just a resident. If you're an American citizen, much is expected of you. The things you do got bearings on the image of the country. So maybe they go much deeper.
Yeah,
I want to think so, because there is a current issue without mentioning me or someone who applied for this Liberian refugee fairness stuff that was passed during the Trump era, and the person went through the process of trying to get a green card, and then he received this letter from immigration that went back into some issues that they were talking about in the past when he was in Liberia. I don't have multiplicity of passport, passed through the U.S. Embassy before with different dates of birth and blah, 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 blah. And so on that, the letter was almost saying, so you have the option to voluntarily depart the country. And all the person did was just to find a lawyer. And as we speak, he got that letter just 4 months ago. And as we speak, as of today's date, he's been issued a green card. So whoever that lawyer he found, may have challenged whatever they were trying to do to that person, and probably he had a stronger case, and they had no other option but to grant the man the green card.
Yeah.
So I'm just mentioning that to say, General Wright can find a lawyer to represent him if he believes that he has a case.
Yeah, but just to share, I don't know why that echo is. I'm not sure if it's coming from your end there. Do you have your monitor too loud?
No, I think the only thing that should be on in this house, because the place is kind of warm, is my air conditioner.
Okay, I keep hearing the reverberation. Anyway, he faces a maximum of 165 years in prison if he was guilty, and $7 million in fines if convicted.
And or what is it?
It's and that inclusive. You pay $7 million and do up to 165 years.
So if he doesn't have the 7 million,
it doesn't say. It doesn't say.
If you tell a 70-year-old man that he should pay a fine of 7 million and 160 some more years in prison, the man knows that at the age of 70, you're not even sure of living the next 20 years. So what does he care? Even if he had the money, why does he pay at the age of 70? If you want to keep him in jail, you keep him in jail. You feed him, do everything for him, and he dies when the time comes. But he wouldn't give you 7 million if he had it. And 160 some more years in prison may not mean anything to him because he's not going to live that period. He's already 70.
Yeah. So they said that the right case is currently.
Why exactly they accusing him about?
He's charged and prosecuted for fraudulently attempting to obtain U.S. citizenship. He is also accused of committing perjury when he reported they filed for U.S. citizenship. So probably some of the questions.
Okay, some of the things the answer on the stuff may have been misleading, right?
Yeah, and he said it's also he is accused of lying about atrocities he allegedly committed to order troops of the armed forces.
There are questions on the, I don't know about the American part, actually it's the same, but there are questions on the green card stuff, whether you committed, you being part of any fighting force and got a record of committing atrocities and all of that.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's a new thing. I think those questions he answered on that green card stuff, I think they do a deeper review when you now want to be citizen. And
That's what
they can go back to it and say, well, when you file your green card, you say you've never been involved with any fighting force, you've never been this. We just found out that you were a general in the armed forces of Liberia, you headed the executive management battalion. There are accusations that you were involved in slaughtering people and blah, 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 blah. I'm sure that's where it's coming from.
Yeah, they even mentioned the things here. They say here some of the charges include persecution of civilian non-combatant of the Gio and Mano tribes,
Okay.
and the murder of civilian non-combatants, assault of civilian non-combatants, and false arrest and imprisonment of civilians non-combatants. So,
Okay.
so
So
the
yeah.
ordinary people who, uh, suffer his wrath, according to what they're saying here.
So yeah, I think sometimes people cause the problem for themselves because the fact that you were once a part of a fighting force, I don't believe that disqualifies you from being granted residency here. So sometimes if you clear, maybe just a myth during that question and answer period, because during the interview, they can go in depth and ask you, okay, because over there you don't have space to explain just saying yes or no. So the question would be, so what is it? Let hear from you a little bit in detail. Yeah, I'm part of the armed forces of Liberia. It was the National Army of the Republic. I don't think it's a crime for anybody to have been part of the armed forces of a sovereign nation. I think what the problem is the additional records like all the ones you were just listing that you've been accused of, not just your affiliation or membership with a constitutional armed forces. So I don't know why people lie about that to say, well, I've never been a part, because it's going to come out.
And if you go back to probably where he became very prominent, where he gained prominence was the retake of LBS during the
Yeah, doing the cool
1985.
part, cool. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and of course, as the commander for the first battalion in Shuffling, the way he was able to regain uh, the country, because that would have been the country, and President Doe came back to power.
Yeah.
Probably, he was rewarded to be commanding general. And then when the war came, of course, the government was fighting against rebel forces. And you're right, Jeronlimek. I don't see the reason why he wouldn't have agreed to the fact that he was a military man. I'm sure at some point he was trained here in America, because to be a general, maybe Fort Benning or one of these military bases, he was trained. So had he said yes, and if they didn't ask the question further, then that would have been on them. But to say, no at all, and knowing that you were a famous general in the Liberian army, again, we're going to wait and see where this case goes.
Yeah, I think that one are very funny. Normally, if they just know you pass by, but for specific question where you answer yes to, they ask you to go to the last page of that form where they have space.
And write something.
Yeah, for explanation. And then they say if the space is not enough, you can add additional paper. They can do say that. Yeah.
All right. So that's for general right and trending news. So, of course, yeah, he was not at the executive mansion guard battalion. He was commanding general in
Yeah,
the
yeah,
first
first
infantry,
infantry battalion. Yeah.
first infantry Shuffling.
So,
Thank you, Sir Wilson. But let's come back to our topics here tonight. Let's begin with the Lofa County senatorial elections. I call our correspondent. I'm not sure what's the situation. Liberia, you can't guarantee anything. But as it stands, the election is supposed to take place on Tuesday, the 14th, and what have you. And from all that is happening, the momentum is on the ground. I've seen, clips here and there of Jala and that of Galapai and the Piah Unity Party team, and all over the place. Are you following from your end?
I'm a member of the Unity Party, and obviously, an election in which the Unity Party is a participant will have my attention. So yes, I'm following. Um, and I can say, and you can take my word for the record, and maybe after Tuesday, you're going to be talking about it, and you can say he said it. It's going to be an easier win for the candidate of the Unity Party. I mean, in an electioneering process, it is good for everybody to have, that self-confidence to say they will win. But deep down in the minds of the other contenders, including the ruling coalition that has failed to field a candidate but declare support for Councillor Jala, they know it's a foregone conclusion, and I think the margin will be much more impressive compared to that which was between Rani Samuka and whoever came next to him. The proportion of the margin will be much bigger. You don't play on. I mean, besides Lofa being a traditional stronghold of the Unity Party, which no one can doubt, and that status is not because of it's not necessarily. Vice President Bouaka may have other impetus to that, but it's not necessarily because of him. But Lofa is the birthplace of the Unity Party. The founding father of the Unity Party, the man who established the Unity Party, the late Dr. Edward Bayan Kesali, was the son of Lofa. There's no doubt that you can take tribe or ethnic groups away from politicking in Liberia. And that's the reason why you find, for example, NUDP, which is a Prince Johnson's party, it's a Nima party, whether you like it or not. Emmanuel Nokwe formed the PUP. Other people refer to it as Pele People Party. It has its base among the Pele people. Charles Walker Bronskin formed the Liberty Party. The principal base of that party is among the Bassa people. I'm not saying Grand Bassa, I'm saying among the Bassa people because Bassa people are everywhere. So the same with the Unity Party, that's why it is. Nobody can argue that, no matter what you do. Thomas Fala and others went to Weah, for example. For the first time in Weah's history, they paved the streets and they did all kinds of things. They were there. And when they left and Bouaka arrived with his candidate, you see what other people are actually taken away by the fact that you pave you put some concrete pavement around, and therefore that is equivalent to being qualified to have their votes for 1 minute. Someone is come and talk. Yeah. So
all right. So while he's contemplating, sometimes don't expect these kinds of things to happen. But just to stay in that lane, like you were saying, so the Liberty Party is more of the Bassa people, and so when this whole thing with Bility, I wanted to add that in with Bility being the Liberty Party and bringing the splinter, the Bassa people say they can't sit there and allow Mandingo man to take the party. The Mandingo man should go to a Haji Kurman party and go fight for it. So I'm just trying to make clear what he's saying, that oftentimes political parties have influence in its establishment by a certain group of people from a certain region or geographical location within the country. And so that would be a prime example. So while you were away, I was trying to just lay that premise quick where you were talking about that political parties can come from a particular group of people or get established by a particular group of people in a particular geographical location, and then it spreads to the broad base of that particular group of people. For instance, the Liberal Party with the Bassa people, and I was hearing chatter recently while I was in Liberia. Why Musa Belete wants for our party? Why he can go to ARCOP, the Mandingo party, what Kurman form, and go on that side and go join them. So you are right. The issue that you talked about with regards to the Loma people and the United Party makes sense.
Yeah,
Continue.
so in other words, I was saying, yes, I'm following, and the elections will be held on Tuesday, and the candidate of the Unity Party will win. Many things also added to it beyond the fact that Lofa is a traditional stronghold of the Unity Party, is the funding home of the party. It's a kind of vexing that somebody wants to be a candidate in an election hearing process. They pass through everything they're supposed to pass through. You qualify them, they contest the election, they win the election. And all of a sudden, all these political machinations start to play, and all of a sudden you say the man who you allowed to participate in the process cannot take a seat. And you deprive that county from having two senators, like all other counties do have, for since those elections were held since 2020, December 2020. We're in 2022. So it's for more than a year.
It's a year and a half.
You deprive that county of being represented by two senators just for political reasons. So, and then you go back, and yes, as a ruling government, they hold you responsible for what happened. You didn't put forward a candidate, you go hide behind somebody. Jala has been, even though he's been ending at a distant second, so he's his own man, but just affiliating with the CDC will cause even more harm for him. Because what they did to the people of Lofa is vexing, and Lofa people want to demonstrate that. It's the first time in our history you saw traditional people being involved, if you follow, where all these devils came out. They went to that bridge, I think it was in Salaye or wherever it was, and all that stuff they were doing, where somebody was interpreting what was happening, the devil was speaking, and all those kinds of things. Traditional society like that, you can find your way easily. And that's the reason why immediately the vice president and his entourage enter Lofa, you see little or nothing about the other contenders who are all over the place, flying from point to point and behaving like they were kings because they built their own private homes there, placed some cement on some of the streets like in Foya, and therefore the people of Lofa are not supposed to owe them something. If you are a government, you elected, you're not doing favor to anybody. You have a responsibility. The things that belong to the whole country, you are the custodian. So if you're using the resources of the country to build a road for somebody, to build a hospital, you're not rendering them any favor. And you cannot try to ration the benefits of the country based on political interest. That if this county is not in your direction politically, you drag your feet in making them to have a fair share of what belongs to all.
Or even deprive them.
Yeah, you can do that. And then if you do it, you want them to have a sense of you doing them a favor. No, you're government. Yes, it's a political party that wins an election and is heading the government, but the government is the government of the Republic of Liberia. You take over what belongs to everybody, right? So the lawmakers, they move over there, they are the ones who are supposed to be saying, this is a national budget that I wanted to spend, and you get executing, not doing anybody any favor. So, Lofa, yeah, clear cut. And it's good that others are trying their best and say, okay, we're there. But in the end, it's going to be a win for whoever is the candidate for the Unity Party.
Let me ask you this question. I'm sure you've probably seen some of those postings. Piah stayed 12 years in power with Ellen. He did nothing in Lofa. Thomas Fala goes and put electricity in that electricity on. They enjoy to campaign at night. What do you make out of that?
So it doesn't have any meaning, and I think the people themselves are sure that it doesn't have. If that was of anything of importance, it will reflect in these elections. The people are not stupid. Look, I work in government. I know what the earnings of people who work in government are. So if an individual start to undertake those stuff, are you telling me that an individual who is working in the government with the limited salary he or she has more money than the state? That the individual can choose to pave road, to build hospitals, to do everything, and the state cannot do it for the people? Is that what we're saying? It doesn't make any sense. And besides that, let's come to the Buaka issue. Buaka was vice president just as Harry Moniba was vice president. Because if you follow this analogy, it goes to say, irrespective of where you come from, when you are chosen as a leader, it should be a special privilege for the country you come from. And that's how we mess Liberia up. So if Jeronlimek M becomes president, Grand Bassa should experience rapid development because he should prioritize Grand Bassa. Of course, if I want to put my interest in Grand Bassa, it can be from my pocket. How much do you pay? The questions we have to ask ourselves, how much do you pay the vice president as a salary? Or even the president? Or even the Thomas Farah, who someone said doing this thing. If you watch keenly the kind of things Thomas Farah can do, Thomas Farah, by virtue of the law that establishes the Anti-Corruption Commission, Thomas Farah to be a person of interest and be investigated. Because what the LACC work is not for just for corruption at this entity, corruption at that entity, and then they try to investigate. And that's the reason why the law says you are supposed to do your asset declaration. Your asset declaration will quite clearly establish what you were worth at the time you're taking over your job. And then that can be matched along with the extent to which you are amassing, what the things you're doing, whether it commensurate with what you were worth when you came in compared to your salary. And then somebody will ask, so how is he doing all of these things? Then you're supposed to be investigated. That's what the law says. Nobody cares. LACC and all these integrity institutions are toothless bulldogs. They're not going to do that. We all saw Thomas Farah, who appeared to have had more money than the whole country during the election with Dillon. So much so that people name him ATM machine. You know, if somebody is proceeding that way, it should be a subject of investigation. No one cares. So what the people would normally do is they will embrace this thing you bring in. Come build our roads. Bring the money, you divide it. In the vote, they're going to, just what they did to him on Serrato. He spent to the extent that you refer to as ATM machine. He was whipped. Hiding behind Jala in the name of, okay, he paved road and Buaka didn't do it. He did it, Buaka didn't do it. All the tricks in political power play, we know it. If the government have money and they want to pave maybe the streets in Foya, and for political reasons, they give Thomas for that money, and they don't want to claim that they did it, but just for political purpose, they say, oh man, get the money here, you go and do it. And we use that to say you are a son of Lofa, the thing the man who was vice president for 12 years couldn't do, you are doing it. But in reality, probably the money is not for him. The money is coming from the government, and it just passed me through individual. That's foolishness. Politically, that's foolishness. And nobody's going to buy those kinds of cheap politicking. And I'm sure after these by-elections, they will realize that it's a stupid strategy, and they got to get away from it because the result of this election will show that nobody got time for that. That even with all that stupid propaganda and strategy, people still follow the men they know represent their interests, and not the men who dishing money around and putting on street light, probably being sponsored by the very government for political purpose. He's a son of Lofa. Until now, when the interests of politics develop, what is Mr. Farah's record there in Lofa? At the end of this term, I think Farah would have been lawmaker for 18 years. So you're talking about Joseph Buaka, 12 years. He would have been lawmaker for 18 years. In 18 years, it is just last year and this year that you have interest in Lofa as a son of Lofa. What else have you done there besides now? And everything you were doing there now, everything you were doing
there, particularly around electioneering, you know.
Everything you're doing there now is for a political purpose. And it's not going to sink. It's not going to land on fertile soil. It's going to be a waste for you, but not waste for the people, because at least the purpose of election made them to benefit from what belongs to them. You are forced to give them what belongs to them for the purpose of election. So they benefit, but it has no dividend for you. And it should be a lesson for all of them who think that grabbing some money and spending it around election time, you know, is going to make, because that's their strategy. The current regime, I mean, I'm sure we'll get to that. They failed. So one of the things you'll see them doing the whole of next year will be what we normally refer to as political projects. You fail. You didn't do the things you're supposed to do. So election year, you feel your hand doing things this way, this play, that play, And you think that can just fool the people to say, oh, but eventually they are doing something and we'll give them the chance, they will complete this thing and do more. The people are not stupid to these political projects. Even though all the laws that people make around are earning, they not support for our president. That's a different debate I don't want to go into. But coming towards the end of the administration, you saw most of those things coming on. The airport was being dedicated. Ministerial complex was being dedicated. This one was being dedicated. That one was being dedicated. It didn't move the people of Bay as far as their decision was concerned. At that point, they were resolved. And the person they wanted to experiment leadership with was Mr. Weah. So nothing you could do. And where the people are, it's the same thing. Towards those elections, they've made up their minds who they want to give the chance to. And that's the unfortunate. They keep trying. Nobody is an injured to say, well, I give it to Volcano, it will be okay. They just say, well, we got to try Volcano too, because Mr. Piah has been there and he didn't do well. If Volcano fails them, fine. They'll still try another person. But they get resolved long before those election times, and they know what they want, and they go for the election. No matter how quick impact project, political project, what they've resolved to do is what they will do.
So you stand firm that Galakpai will be the next senator for Lofa County?
We'll take the spot that was denied Granny Samoka, who won convincingly, who passed through all of the processes that were laid down to be qualified as a candidate, contested, won the elections, and everything became about politics until he was robbed. When you listen to the leak audio from the AFL chief of staff, if you listen to that audio, what does it tell you? That audio alone tells you that Granny Samoka was an innocent victim.
And that's why Moses is always cribbling this government for selective justice and cherry picking and all of that, considering just the same thing, misappropriation of the road fund. And now they're saying that 7 million of that money was presented to the legislature in the recasted budget, and that's why it was used towards salary, but it's 25 millions in total. But here Samuel Tua does that, and he's still sitting there. The same time that Tua took $25 million to do mop-up exercise, no head, no tail.
Once the lawmakers are dancing to the tune of the ruling establishment, they don't care about the interests of the people. They will always protect these people, especially when there's something in there for them. And the guys are smart. When the likes of Tua and others take interest in misusing public funds, they just factor the lawmakers in. For them, for most of the guys over there, it's all about money. I mean, once they are factored into anything, the one who spearheads that stuff, that illegality will be protected because they are also protected. Everybody gets protected. You factor the lawmaker in, you factor the president in, you factor everybody factor in. You're not going to crucify somebody for anything when whatever you're accusing of, everybody benefited. Just leave it. Not through that legislature.
So just before we wrap up on this, the NEC spends about $1.2 million just for these elections, and that money could have gone to the Roberts International Airport and enhances electricity productivity. That same money could have gone to the John F. Kennedy Medical Center to beef up the hospital, or New Town Redemption Hospital, the Ministry of Education. $1.2 million may not be a lot of money, but it has something that it can do. We take that money and we put it on another elections when someone had already won this seat. Tell me.
That has always been the issue. But in the first place, during the period of the election itself, why were you allowing all those people who were representatives who had unfinished terms wanting to be senator? Doing that, you know that if they won, you're creating a lot of by-elections around the country. And to run those by-elections will cost money. So that sense of irresponsibleness was already there. The Lofa, because they didn't want Browning there, if that the cost they had to pay is not coming from their own pocket, that's the taxpayers' resources, they don't care. For as long as it is used to meet their objective, they don't care. So that's it. Who paid the 1.2 million? It's not from Weah's pocket. It's not from Tua's pocket. It's taxpayers' money. They use taxpayer money to advance their own agenda. That's cool. And who told you the guys care about the things you're talking about? RIA, JFK, all these things you're talking about. If they didn't use that money for that purpose in the first place, will it still go to those places you're talking about? No, it wouldn't. So it makes no difference. The money not going to go there. If they didn't use 1.5 million to go and, or 1.2 million to go and have that election, they will still not send 1.2 million that they had decided to send to JFK. They're not going to send it there. They're not going to send it in another place where the decision was not made to send it. If it will be safe and go anywhere else, it will go in their pocket.
So one of our viewers here, DC Wilson, is saying that Mr. Piah, your former boss, Madam Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, threw Brownie Samukai under the bus, but not publicly defending him to explain to the court how the money was expended.
Well, I wouldn't argue that because I mean, because of where I sat, I was informed as well that the money in question was not squandered by Brownie. We have taken a decision to, as a way of granting international image to Liberia, to be involved with a peacekeeping initiative in Mali. But because it was an abrupt situation, it could not have been reflected in the national budget. So except you had some extra funding from somewhere to use for that initial financial obligation that you had to meet, you didn't have a budget line to do that. So since this money is something that was being deducted from the salaries of personnel of the armed forces that they consider as some kind of compulsory savings, and the money was there, I'm told it was just the idea to say, okay, but there's some money here, we can use it and replace it. So the defense minister gets the instruction, the money is utilized to meet some of the obligations they had to meet. And so that kind of arrangement is a governmental arrangement. And I agree that if it was me and the defense minister was in that situation and I knew something differently, that he didn't eat the money, I should be able to, just to provide the facts, to say, hey, this is where we stand on this issue. So again, what did Brownie himself say about that? So what more can we say? I mean, the fellow could be right, but I'm convinced that Brownie did not steal or eat the money they talk about, because at least I have some idea as to where that money went.
But since we're on the topic, would it be a hypocrisy that this Weah government has played with Brownie because of his refusal to join the CDC during those elections? The fact that they all sat in a meeting. There was a meeting that they sat in where
prior to President Weah taking office. That was not even after he took office. There was so this was part of it, and I cannot confirm that because I'm not Brownie, but we all heard Lorraine. We all heard from the grapevine that they approached Brownie to be their candidate. Brownie said no. Maybe the vengeance for all that was what they unleashed on him. Whatever it was, the seat is not going to go to where they wanted it to go. It will still be for the Unity Party, except that it's not Brownie, but it's still going to be for the Unity Party. And Brownie has a long history of service. Brownie worked internationally. I guess he wanted to serve his people, but he's not desperate, right? So depriving of that seat is not a sin at depriving one poor guy who depends purely on that electoral victory to survive, and that taking it from him will push him down the gutter. He's going to suffer and things going to get bad for him. No, that's not Brownie. Brownie worked in places like Kosovo for the UN. He worked in all kinds of different places. He was defense minister for not just 12 years, but prior to that, from Soyotan, he was there. They organized the Black Beret and did all those kind of things. He runs one of the most powerful private security services in the country. So he's not a broke guy. He's not a poor guy that you will say, okay, I'm doing this, I want to subdue him. And, you know, he depended on just this for survival. And when we take it from him, you will crumble and you can't beg him at our feet to join us. You saw him? Are you following the clips from Lofa?
Yeah, he still Galama. But you know, Jeronlimek, I think I really have a different kind of respect for Browning. The way he handled this whole thing, like you said, uh, you know, he didn't make any noise. He really wanted to serve his people, but you
Absolutely.
know,
There's no, he knows that the government is more powerful than any individual. He knew that this was a fight initiated by the government. He knew that with all the backing, like the other fellow said, with all the backing of his former boss in such a matter, he could not fight the whole regime. And so he just had to, you know, watch them do what they want to do. They went to court. And again, you didn't expect him to do anything when the final decision on this matter came from the Supreme Court, the final arbiter of justice. What you see happening in America right now, where the Supreme Court, I think, coming to the end of the term, they just rushing with all kinds of cases, handling gun cases. And today they handled Roe versus Wade, which appears to be a very unpopular decision. You see demonstration all across the state, but that's how far it will go because the Supreme Court decisions are final. They will protest, they will do everything. What more can they do? The court has ruled. So in Brownie's case, he knew that anything coming from the Supreme Court was final, and rather than grieving and worrying himself over it, just like it was unfortunate when they decided to do the sentencing, which didn't make sense, you know, and then the president himself knew that, hey, even though we've been targeting this man, but this thing doesn't make sense. So he came in to suspend that sentence, a sentence that just didn't make any sense. And one would wonder why would that kind of sentencing come from the court? Something is fundamentally wrong too. The court could make those kind of decisions.
again, the political implications. Well, let's go to our next, bullet here. We're talking about the 5 opposition lawmakers that have crossed copy and joining the coalition for democratic change, the CDC. They pledged their support during the second term of President Weah bid for the presidency to continue on for 12 years. Those opposition lawmakers are Johnson Guekulo of Nima County, P. Mike Jory of Maryland County, Mambu Sonny of Grand Cape Mount County. The others are Senators Rebo Brown of Maryland County and Simeon Taylor of Grand Cape Mount County. Do you see this as the conduit through which others will join? Because it takes one to take the step, and then others will follow.
Look, 1 minute.
It is hard to do, some of our broadcasts when the setting is such. But I think he'll be back shortly. Okay, good.
But this is what I want to say about that. I don't see those things as anything because we've learned our own lessons along the way. I'm a part of the Unity Party, and towards the 2017 elections, there was a big program at the Capitol building there when 19 of the 30 senators endorsed the candidacy of Vice President Weah for president. Some of those 19 senators were up for re-election themselves. And you know the rest of the story, what happened in those elections. Mr. Weah won 14 out of 15 counties. In other words, those senators who came declaring were just declaring themselves. It has no value and it's of no significance when your political declaration doesn't go beyond yourself because you don't have the followings, or if the followings are there, you don't control them, you don't decide what they want. So those 19 senators, if the various constituents they were representing, I agree with their endorsement and follow them, Joseph Boakai would have been president. They didn't agree with them. So they came as empty shells. So it's the same year. Simeon Taylor has always been around electioneering business. He always wanted this power stuff. He hasn't been able to get it. How did he get it? This very CPP arrangement that brought Unity Party, ANC, everybody. The forces had to be pulled from everywhere So he became senator not of his own accord, but for all the parties that were collaborating in the opposition. So if he's joining CDC as he said he's doing, these opposition parties that were collaborating, whose membership propelled him to the Senate seat, are not going with him. They are still in AMC, still in UP, Liberty Party, ALP. They are still there. So Mr. Taylor doesn't carry anybody. But besides, what does he want? Could be my question. He cannot say he's doing it because the government is progressing, the government is succeeding. You and I know the rest of the story with regards to the status of the government. He can't say he's doing it because he's up for election next year and he's not sure that the people who made him will stand by him, and therefore he got to look for a different place to seek comfort to be elected. His position was all in 2020. If for 9 years, if anything, by the time of that election, he will still have 6 more years to be senator. So fundamentally, there's no reason for going there. The only temptation I could have to believe is what Front Page Africa published. Front Page Africa, they say that each of the folks who crossed over were given 30,000. Now think of it. Even folks in that little town who are not senators, they're not represented, not government official. Some who just doing their normal hustle here, there, no different thing. 30,000 is not much of a money for them. So what's more about a guy who will still have 6 more years as of 2023 election period. As 2023 will be ending, the guy will still have 6 more years. So anybody who will be elected as president in 2023 will have the same tenure as Mr. Taylor, 6 years. Why is he joining another political party when he just got elected on a collaboration ticket?
Let me just say this quick. Yeah, so maybe he's doing it because he's projecting that this government of Weah rather will be the next government, and for him to get some bargaining chips and all of that, knowing where the current house is configured, that the majority is the ruling party. Maybe he wants to be on that bandwagon where everything gonna be, in their favor, because this bash is not the first bash. In 2021, we also saw where 5 of the lawmakers, who were then representatives like Julie Weah, Haja Fatah Sanyon of Lofa County and Bon counties, respectively, Alexander Piah of Riverside County, Rosanna Shack of Riverside County, Matthew Zaza of Sano County, they all cross carpet to the CDC.
Matthew Zaza was clear. At least he had an objective. Matthew Zaza represents one of the districts in Sino. Sino, Grand Crew, and other places are predominantly occupied by Mr. Weah's tribesmen. Matthew Zaza said because he comes from a place where the president has his tribesmen and women, he was on instruction to support their son. And that was it. So do I take Matthew Zaza serious? I don't take him serious. Matthew Zaza was made a representative on the Unity Party ticket. He has a long history with President Sirleaf when she was at the finance ministry. There were a lot of young people at that time who worked there with Madam Sirleaf, who had a personal relationship with her. Matthew Zaza was one of them. And it was that connection that even up to the point where he was chosen as a candidate to run, he was still working to the Ministry of Finance in some capacity there. And then, so in other words, I'm saying he's been with the Unity Party from his beginning to now, or to whatever period he did that crossing over. And when he did the crossing over, it was purely for ethnic reasons. That's understandable. Roseanne Shag from Riverside County, I wouldn't know why she did it. Riverside has never been a stronghold of the CDC in the first place. when she won her election, she didn't win as a CDC candidate. I guess she didn't even win on any of the big party tickets. She just won on the ticket of some of those little parties that people normally run to when they don't win the primary in their own parties. And whatever it was, she won. I'm tempted to think that political parties alone, in many cases, will not help you. It has to be something else, because if it were just about political parties alone, Dallas Weah, who became Riverside County Senator before he just got defeated during the 2020 election, would never have been senator, because he went on the ticket of an unknown, obscure political party. He won. Piah, I know him personally from Maryland County. He became representative on the Unity Party ticket. CDC had candidate against us there. Other parties had candidate. He won other than convincingly. His victory was not narrow. So it was not attributable to the CDC. So if he believes he's performed and he has not done poorly for which you be afraid, I don't know why is the benefit for joining the CDC. Mabusoni has been in that opposition community for long. I don't remember which of the party. I don't know whether it's Liberty Party or Unity Party, one of the two parties. But I think he's one of the few who've been there from 2005. So he's the Tomo father. So it hasn't cost CDC to keep him there for 18 years. So running the CDC now also doesn't make sense. And I don't believe it has any political dividend for the CDC itself as an institution. Because if you can learn your lesson, then you will not waste your time behind the lawmaker. Let's just go back to 2020 by-election. The very reverses we're talking about, Dallas Weah, towards those elections, he joined CDC. And CDC behaved as though they never had partisans in reverses. So the man who just joined them at that time was the man they chose as their candidate. He was not even second. The election there was between Wellington Given Smith and one of my Peking called Steve Tikwa. Steve went as an independent. Just like, I think Wellington, I don't know whether he went independent or went somebody, but the point I'm making, the CDC candidate who was Dallas Weah, who was senator for 9 years and had just joined them, was zero. The same thing in Lofa. Senator County. He was a complete reactionary to the cause of the Unity Party that he was representing in the Senate. He was opposed to everything and sanctioning everything that CDC was doing. And he got convinced that Unity Party were not going to take him again for another 9 years. So he crossed over to the CDC and he was their candidate. He didn't even come second, third, or fourth. He was one of the least. Bon County, Henry Yala, he was senator for 9 years. During that period, he joined the CDC also. His attempt to join the CDC was resisted fiercely by Joy Howard Taylor. And nobody listened to her. They put him there. Prince Moe beat him like a young baby. So the point I'm making is that you look back historically, all the simple from the opposition people who crossed over to you and who you saw as giant, therefore made them your candidates automatically, they all got flocked, including Mr. Tyler, who was Speaker, the third ranking person in the country, as a Unity partisan, who eventually left and said you're funding your own party, LPDP, all that kind of thing. You endorse him. Everybody saw Hasno beating a young baby. You have Victor Wassing. Victor Wassing won his election as an independent. You cajole him the same way you cajole the other people. Victor Wassing join you. When all the opposition forces came together beyond the other one who now crossed over to you, who you know he left and he right and decided to join over to you. The Victor Wassing man was flocked, thus becoming the shortest lawmaker in the country's history. He was elected, I think, just around the same time that they don't go elected in some kind of by-election in that place because
I think it was the death of someone, right?
Yeah, the death of
was it Geraldine?
Not Geraldine. It wasn't Grant Kidmore. I call it old man. He used to be the finance before.
No, I mean for
Dagosa, Senator Dagosa.
No, I'm talking about Dylan. Was it Geraldine?
Yeah, Dylan was Geraldine, but I mean,
okay. The guy you're talking about.
Yeah, Victor Watson man was Dagosa's death in Kidmont. So those by-elections were held almost around the same time. He won as an independent, and then he joined CDC. He got beaten. Maybe joining CDC was a punishment for him. And this is what you're going to see happening to all these people. Blair Brown, he won the elections in Maryland as an independent candidate. Unity Party had a candidate at that time. He wasn't a good candidate. He wasn't strong. CDC also had a candidate there. So he won as an independent. But you see, Maryland has a history of not keeping their senators, in particular, beyond 9 years. And some just decided, like Gloria Scott, when she decided that she was not going to rerun. But Balu and others who try again, you know what they did to them.
But 9 years after 9 years, man, come on.
So it is likely that Blair Brown, having won as independent, the 9 years coming, he's not sure whether he can survive as an independent. He wants to experiment whether having the support of the ruling party can help him in a way. So he's trying that. But the whole thing is just crap. And it tells you that Liberia has a long way to go. Because the reason why we have our system of government structure the way it is for check and balance. Because the only way you can have the government performing if there's effective check and balance. Look where you live in America. With all the things we do, you see how tough the Congress maintain their position away from Biden and people in the middle of the executive, the people at the level of the court doing their own thing. That level of independence and the kind of check and balance that it produces can constrain the government to perform. In our case, we don't want any check and balance. Everybody wants to be in one boat, especially with that legislature. They are known for jumping ship. Even if they don't jump ship and they remain in their party, they are known for not standing up. They're always giving in. Anything the president wants, and this is not just what we are, even for the government in which we serve. They're always weak, toothless bulldog. They bow down to the president. Anything the president wants, the president gets it. That tradition is continuing. Any other leader, even the president will come after Weah. You still have that nonsense taking place with the lawmakers not standing for anything. They're not helping to create any check and balance. They will always bow down to the powerful presidency.
So what do you do?
And once that is the issue, the country will remain as it is. The backwardness of the country can substantively be attributed to a legislature that doesn't stand up for anything. And it continues.
So what do you think this crossing over carpet, does with guys like DeLong, Jonathan Subway, Lady Lawrence, Kanga Lawrence, Yeke Koluba, at his level, all of these people, these few people who are vocal.
Not just the crossing over, because I did say to you that there are some who will not cross over, but it's still.
No. What I'm saying, what is strength in the numbers now, when these people are crossing over?
Yeah, but the strength in their number is not based on the crossing over. I mean, that's the point I'm making. Maybe you're not getting it. I'm saying even when these people did not cross over, what interest were they representing?
Okay.
They were signing up to everything that the executive wants. So crossing over is just
it doesn't have any impact.
Yeah, but I'll give you, for example, Maurice Etuma hasn't crossed over anywhere. He's supposed to be a Unity Party lawmaker. He's more alike a regime collaborator than a Unity Party lawmaker. Milton Tiaje was elected as a Unity Party lawmaker. And you name them. There are plenty there. We can name all of them. They all were elected as a Unity Party and other parties lawmakers. But by their action, by the things they do, they're almost like part of the ruling party. So what that does to people who have the desire to stand up is that it doesn't enable them to make any impact, no matter the kind of promises they made before they went there, because legislative politics is about number. So even if they have fun ideas and they put in those fun ideas over. Once they don't have the number to back them, those ideas will be trash. So what we need to do if we want to have a legislature to make that will have impact, not just to elect a Billon or a Borchas, and then elect a bunch of other people who don't care for anything, who got no principles and who not going to stand for anything. Because then you basically wasted your time electing Dillon and Borchard, probably just giving them a job, but they're not going to make any impact, they're not going to change anything. Once the majority of the guys are bootlickers and dancing to the tune of the powerful executive. And like I said, sometimes when you're saying this simple thing, you just want to be anti-Weah. No. The point I'm making about how the legislature has been subservient to the executive runs back. It didn't start with Weah, it's not going to end with Weah. It was like that during the government in which we served. It is like that now. If care is not taken, it will be like that when another person takes over from Mr. Weah. And even Mr. Taylor's case was different. It was proportional representation. So proportional representation, you own it to your party. They don't elect individual, they elect the party. So in this case, where even though you go in party names and people elect you as a person and not the institution, as you still can stand for anything, the country is not going to go anywhere. You had 25 million mapper exercise was a question. The only people who could cross-check it was the legislature. Breeze, nothing happened. You're having road fund issue. Legislature sort of checkmate it. Breeze, they finished with it. They just told you that nothing happened. Listen to the interview of the president the other day. Somebody sent that clip to me, where the journalists who were interviewing was talking about, hey, but the agriculture minister, the water and sewer man, the National Transit Authority man, all these people, LACC are investigated and saying they are this.
And that's where we're going on. Let me introduce that. So the last bullet here says that whether President Weah is committed to fighting corruption. The Liberian Anti-Corruption Commission has indicted several officials in his government for reported acts of corruption. Those accused are the Minister of Agriculture, Janine Cooper, reportedly awarded contracts to her brother, Zubin Cooper, under fishy conditions, and she allegedly used agricultural commodities of the ministry for her own personal gain. The agriculture minister is also accused of giving contracts to Farbra, a firm in which she has beneficial ownership to who she gives contracts. The minister has since dismissed all allegations of corruption and denied any wrongdoing. Then the LACC is also seeking the prosecution of the Liberian Institute of Statistics and Geoinformation Services, the Liberian Water and Sewer Corporation, and the Planned Parenthood Association for breaking the law. According to the LACC, Legis Director General Francis Red and his deputies, Wilmot Smith and Lawrence George, reportedly violated several laws in the process of purchasing second-handed generators and tablets for the upcoming 2023 national census. With regard to the Liberian Water and Sewer Corporation, the LWSC, the LACC accused the corporation's managing director, Mosere Momo, of illegally disposing of public assets and transferring the profits to his personal use. As a result, Momo was charged with economic sabotage by the LACC. The executive chairperson of the LACC stated that the officials from the four agencies will be prosecuted on allegations of abuse of office, theft of property, conflict of interest, and economic sabotage, respectively. It is expected that the Ministry of Justice in the coming days will proceed to court to prosecute the officials. Now, when you go back to the interview you were talking about regarding Janine, President Weah, I heard that interview where he claimed that the law needs to take its course. You can't just, dismiss somebody and the information is now on his desk, so he can't act and blah, blah, blah. You were press secretary to President Ellen Johnson. Every day the president gets briefing, whether formal or informal. Mr. Piah, are you telling me that Weah stands corrected for saying that he doesn't know anything with regards to the LACC's report and has not gotten on his desk? And also Musa Dean corroborates that as well.
Well, so that is not true. That is not true. As far as I know, during President Sirleaf's time, when any of the anti-graft institutions were engaged with a major investigation and the finding something that has to do with an official of the government, they reached out to the office of the president for briefing. I'll give you one example. There was an issue with the National Port Authority and Matilda Packer. Before that issue could even get to the media, what we decided at that time was part of our media strategy to always get ahead of certain things. And when the president was briefed about what has happened, the president acted by suspending initially Matilda Packer before that matter could even lay in the hands of the media. So in this other case, it's a bit different. I think it was more compelling for the president to act because an entity of the government, which is the LACC, established by law, has done the investigation and found these people culpable. The only reason why the court aspect is of any importance is because you want to make sure you have an indictment so the person have an opportunity to be acquitted or found guilty. So you don't need to, Lauren, stop. You don't need to wait for that to take presidential action. Now that those persons are established to be culpable by the Anti-Corruption Commission, even if you don't want to dismiss them, the most honorable thing the office of the president could do is to suspend them. Since he said he believes in, we got to listen to the interview where you talk about, it not be fair, the people got to go to court, they got to be found guilty. Is that asking question whether the final verdict? Yes, from the LACC perspective, the final verdict. But if you still need a court action before you can consider it a final stop, at least suspend them. Because a person cannot be accused or cannot be said to be culpable for something, as the LACC has said, and you think it's normal for them to still be in a position, and you go further to say you're not even aware. It means that as the man who is running the country, the head of state, things happening all around you and you don't know, including things that concern your ministers that you appointed, things that concern senior officials in the government, you don't know? What makes you a president then? You say it's not on your desk. Someone sent that stuff. I think it was Moses who sent that interview with me. And when I listened to it, I said, but we're in trouble. We're in trouble.
And honestly, and when Moses sometimes says this president is clueless, he doesn't understand his role, I kind of now beginning to see this. Because, as I said, informally or formally, there's nothing that is happening in Liberia. If President Weah wants to know by the seconds, by the minute, by the day, he wouldn't know. The second thing here is when a person is accused and you keep them in a position, meaning at that head of the ministry, she has the means of making a mess with the investigation. She can clean up. But removing her from the setting, will probably give a better and objective investigation rather than have her in the setting.
That's what it should be. The person has to be removed. If you don't want to dismiss it, it's understandable, but suspension is an option. And that's something we used to do when I was there. The last time I spoke to some of the police who are there, they don't do it anymore. And that was when the head of state comes to work. It's an everyday thing. On her schedule, there are two persons he or she meets for briefing before he or she starts the day's work. The first person is the National Security Advisor. The National Security Advisor will brief the president, and after his briefing, the president will be fully aware of the security state of the nation that she is presiding over as of the beginning of her day's work. Because it looks foolish When you just leave from your house in the morning as president, go to your office, what do you know is happening around you in the country you're going to be governing? In your capacity as president, you can know everything. That's why you have all these people. You got police director, defense minister, AFL chief of staff, immigration boss. The national security advisor is coordinating with all these persons. When he comes to work in the morning, based on his coordination with these people, he knows what the state of the nation's security is. So it is now his duty in a summary form. Immediately the president arrives in the office, the first person she meets is with him. So now, depending on how long they have to talk, they stay there 45 minutes, 1 hour, more than 1 hour. It just depends on what is available for them to talk about. So he briefs the president. After that, the president is fully aware of the security situation of the nation as he starts the day's work. The next person that goes in that office after the national security advisor is the press secretary. It's the same briefing. By that time, you have gotten all the newspapers. You have summarized all the major issues in those newspapers, things that the president needs to know about. If, for example, LACC did an investigation that they have not brought to the president's attention, but the fact that they found somebody liable is already in the media, you're briefing her and say, okay, but so Inquirer is saying the LACC has concluded their investigation into Minister so-and-so who was accused of doing something. Have they formally reported to you? The president will say yes or no. But then you tell the president that, oh, but that is already in the paper. So if they didn't report to the president after your briefing, when you finish with all that stuff, you'll be taking note. Then, if the LACC, whose word now is in the paper, have not talked to her, then when you leave with all your briefing, she's doing her work now, she start reaching out to them. Hey, Weah, when Weah was there, because Weah is to be the LACC, we just saw in the paper that you finalized your investigation on the people and they are culpable. It's in the paper, it's in the media. You haven't talked to me on it. So you see, that's how important our work was at that time. When I spoke to some of the fellows who are dead now because we are friends, they told me they can't even see the president. The president doesn't have an interest in something that the press secretary coming to waste his time to briefing every morning. But the press secretary even have asset. If the press secretary went to the chief of protocol at the executive management office, or we may go sit on the president basis, and they didn't have to go to chief of protocol. It's scheduled. In fact, it's not a verbal arrangement. So every morning, even the president's schedule will be blank because they got nothing else that they think about. Everything will just happen. Those two things will be written on the schedule. Briefing, press secretary, briefing, national security advisor. So it does not require the approbation of the protocol group for me to have access to the office.
Or the Minister of State.
It doesn't require anybody. When I come, I don't even go to the Minister of State office. I go straight to the door. Only one person there who is the agent in charge. That's a security person. That agent in charge will open the door. I will show my head there. If she was busy for anything that she just wanted to wait, once the door opens, she'll lift her face and say, oh, Mr. Piah, just give me 1 second. Then the agent in charge will close the door. They have a booth right near the door, their small office. We'll sit down there. When she finished with what she was doing, they got a bell. She rings that bell at the back of the office where the agent in charge was. That's where it rings. When that bell rings, that agent will enter. The other agent will enter the office from the back. When they go there, say, tell the man to put Mr. Piah. Then you go there, you have your conversation. You will got nothing to do with it. Minister of State got nothing to do with it. It's a direct asset that the press secretary has to the office. After that briefing, when you return to your office, if there is anything that has bearing on your work that you want to talk to your boss, you tell the people to call you and you come upstairs. So now you see her 5, 6, 7 times, depending on how many times she sees it need to call you. But that one in the morning is a strict schedule that you do every morning, and the national security advisor does every morning. That puts you in charge. From that interview, from what I understand, those things are not happening. And therefore, there's a lot happening around the president that he's not knowledgeable about, which is bad.
And the president, and that's what we say. The de facto prime minister runs the country is Nathaniel McGill. It seems as though this guy just stands to the door and everyone has to go through him. And so all of those meaningful protocols, but because this president refuses to learn, refuses to improve, and he runs a credible government. And I'm not ashamed to say this because I go to Liberia and I see what's trending. It's just unfortunate. Look at 5 years. What can this president show for his international diplomacy? What can he show? Nothing. Which president went to Liberia? The foreign ministers. What is Liberia's true representation on the international community? A trip to Israel, a trip to the Arab world, 1 or 2 trips here to France. What impact has it made in 5 years for our foreign diplomacy? Nothing whatsoever. And the things you're saying, it makes all the sense in the world. He's not being debriefed. Maybe it's selective what he wants to know. Or even if he knew anything, it's of no significance to him. Because he doesn't care.
I will not be press secretary under that situation because it's not about me, it's about yourself too. Because when you leave these jobs, there's going to be a growth pattern, and you want to go do other things. You want to advance. You want to go up. And if the work you are doing did not have any bearing that could make you to be any important, you go to work yesterday in your office, you don't even see the man you speak for. You're the boss of the president. Your access to him should be unhindered. You're shielding him in a way away from the press. That's why you are his voice. When you speak, he has spoken. But how do you do that effectively when you're not even having access to him? How easy is your work when the things are happening in the public that he's supposed to be knowledgeable about, that only you're supposed to be briefing him on, you're not having a chance of briefing on them? Is the national security advisor not having a chance to talk on a security issue with all of a sudden you have complicated security issue that everybody at threat? Then you want to bring the national security advisor and the guy say, hey, but you're not giving me a chance, so I can't tell you anything. So how would I have even brief you with these things that are supposed to happen? That's why it is there, not because Ellen wanted it, but it's a standard. It's a standard in the office of the president that those things happen. So it was not by choice. When they make the schedule, when we're leaving work this evening, the schedule is made. So the schedule is given to not everybody, because schedule is also security. When they made a schedule, they give one to the security advisor, the minister, and say how when the protocol people got one, press secretary has one. Because there will be a lot of things on the schedule that will require media coverage. So the press secretary sees that, and then he knows that, okay, by 2 o'clock, the president will be at this function and require media coverage. He gives instruction to the people in the office to call the executive management press crew to be around before that time. If the function is out of the building, when the convoy ready to move, they all in the convoy, they move. When the function is in the building, they assemble in the press secretary office. When the hour comes before that function, everybody goes into the room where it's supposed to happen before she comes in. It's only an advanced schedule enable the person to do that. In what I'm told is happening now, all those things are not happening. So that's why they say you need an old model to apply the new ones. So a few old models like that, Ikina Wesley, who were here with me the other time, when they came to power, I left immediately because I was with Piah. They talked to Ikina to stay on. So I think for 6 months, Ikina will stay there. And then the same agreement started fighting Ikina. Ikina get downstairs, they can't call, you can't even go upstairs. When you go, the Minister of State office door that we just used to walk through, when I was first secretary, just walk through, put another door in a place that is always sealed to cross that door. Somebody have to inform Maggie that you cross that place. Maggie have to agree that he wants to see you before you cross that place. Other than that, you can't cross that place. So Ikina sitting there, he's supposed to be the veteran communication guy. He's not seeing Maggie, he's not seeing the president, he's not seeing anybody. And then Maggie will get ready and complain, say, oh, I know where that man working in the building, so I can't see the man. I can't see the man. And so now they'll call Eugene because Eugene was our guy. We all work together. And Eugene will call me and say, well, man, your man here, they posted, they can't see him. I call Ikina, I say, but what are they talking about? This man see you play up. He can agree before you go there. So I've gone up there several times to ask that I want to see, and nobody will allow me to cross there. So why is he talking about that? You can't see it. So, but kind of, there's a whole lot of issues.
Absolutely.
When the issues are like that, then you'll find the situations that you see unfolding. So I think we have an opportunity for a solution. If we abuse it next year, 2023, And so be it. Then we live with it for another 6 years. And I don't know what things will look like if we have that kind of situation for 12 years. It will be very difficult to reinvent where we have reached before this reversal.
And let me just say this. People think corruption is always the taking of money, but that's corruption in itself. When you deny access of the people with the credibility, with the qualification, who's supposed to do a piece of work, and you're not giving them the opportunity to work in a free, harass-free environment. When you have a foreign minister who cannot travel to the United Nations, and you still keep him there, that's corruption because you're depriving our foreign diplomacy. When you have a health minister who has her own clinics
Hospital.
and hospital, that's corruption, conflict of interest,
Some
and yet we have refused.
some of the assistant minister and deputy minister and the minister of education have schools.
Yeah. So all of these things are corruption. And you, Mr. President, continue to allow these things. I don't know. I don't know what else can we do. How much can we talk? What else needs to be done? But this is what I would say. The Liberian people, you're looking. You're looking, and if you like this, it's your choice. Some of us not talking because we have any political affiliation. I have not joined any political party in Liberia, and it's not my intention. But I'm talking as a Liberian and who love my country, and I think that there's good for that country rather than what is happening. You can do your stealing. You can do your stealing, but don't deprive the country the direction it needs to go by your inactions to take decisions that are necessary to change the country's image. That's what I wanted to add. Come in, Jerry.
Yeah, so you're right. And that's what I said. We have next year to do what we're supposed to do. We can still sanction what we have and have it for 12 more years. Or we can correct the error and give another person a chance. And I'm not saying that necessarily to say, okay, come become a unity party man. You say you're not party man, I'm a party man. Okay, forget about unity party. You got other you got other actors. Try anybody who you think is better. Let it just not be Weah. You know, when the elections were to take place here in the US the last time, it was like, okay, anybody else but not Donald Trump. That was it. Because the people knew who they wanted and the energies were put together and they got what they wanted. Well, what will we do? One thing I know, the international people will be very focused on the election in Liberia. They're going to have a deep interest in it. It's not going to be possible for anybody to rig the elections.
Let's hope so.
So nobody should feel discouraged to sit down in the back seat and say, oh, the guys, they already made up their mind to rig the election. No, then you're defeating yourself. Come out, vote the way you want to vote. The result will come. They're not going to rig any elections. Just like they've not been able to rig any elections. If they wanted to rig elections, the bloody nose they got during the midterm election, they would not have had it. They had the power, they could rig all those elections, but the facts were glaring, the facts were stubborn. We can make those same facts glaring and stubborn in 2023 and see where we go from there. But there's a big problem. It's a big problem, and I hope we can sort it out in 2023.
Thank you so much, Mr. Piah, for coming through tonight, joining us here in the Issues Room. Great conversation. Again, we'll always reach out because honestly, your wisdom, your intelligence regarding some of these things is very needed. I've learned a lot just from tonight, the process with the president's debriefing, and I was very, 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 very much sure that President Weah knew something about the LACC's document rather than to come on the media and just show his simplicity and tell both his lies. I knew that somewhere informally he was told what was coming up. But again, you know, that's the kind of government we have, and that's the country. That's where the country is. So thank you so much. I appreciate your time. Thank you. I know you're a family man. You gotta go ahead and
Yeah, thank you, thank you. These kids are giving me hell. You can't even
thank you.
control them. You're hearing them all in your back.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, we want to thank all of you for being there with us tonight here in the Issues Room, our 69th edition. We're claiming steadily. Moses Sandy couldn't be in studios with us tonight because of some very personal issues, but beyond his control. He was hoping to join us momentarily, but it didn't take place. So I believe it was just beyond his control. And I want to thank former press secretary and Liberian journalist, Mr. Jeronlimek Piah, for stepping in and giving us good conversation here tonight. We'll review, the oppositions that crossed over to the CDC a few days ago. What does it mean for Weah's bid for the presidency in 2023? Jeronlimek said it doesn't mean anything because sometimes when they cross over, they don't take the partisans with them. They only take the individual vote. So it's not going to be of any significance. We also looked at the issue of President Weah, whether he really want to fight corruption in that country. When he openly says that he is not aware of any document from the LACC, that in itself is just preposterous. With me not having worked in the Ministry of State and connected to the executive mansion, I knew from my inner spirit and knowing that being in leadership role that you get the briefing, whether informally, but for him, to have said that as the sitting president and talking about let the court, take its course and blah, blah, blah. But these people still have these clouds hanging over them. You don't want to suspend them. You don't want to remove them. You keep them closer to the crime scene. What do you think? What do you think if they keep you closer to the crime scene? You're able to manipulate the investigation, especially being the minister proper. So what this president will do that would make sense? What would George Weah do that would make sense? You can't talk to the people. You can't take decision. You are afraid to do anything. You're hiding behind the curtains in Jamaica resort. Nothing you want to do. But everything in the country is wrong. Everything going wrong. And yet you don't want to do anything. Anything about it. What type of president is this? Did you really come for the Liberian people? Or you came to get rich and make your crowd of boys rich? That's why you're doing what you're doing. But the Liberian people are looking. This is just tiring. This is just tiring. You could be president for 12 years if you were taking necessary steps and decisions to make in the interest of the country. Mr. President, you need to work. You need to step up. You can learn on the job. We've seen it happen. President Doe came to power. He knew nothing. But within his 10 years, you could see the changes in President Doe. You have even had more exposure, international exposure. You've traveled extensively. You lived abroad for a greater portion of your life. Just being out there in other countries and acclimating and living under the rules and regulations, that in itself is education. And you can't take that experience back to your country. And you come back and you just running your crowd about government, people pointing finger, all your people committing crimes in the country, corruption, conflict of interest. You're sending people to the Senate to get confirmed. You don't even know their resume. You got no history. You don't even use a research team to say, look, probe this guy. A recommendation was made. What type of government is this? What type of country are you running? And you really want us to accept this? My brother, you need to wake up, man. You need to wake up. You're not going to win presidency 2023 with this kind of behavior. If you think that you're going to spend money, the people will eat the money because that's their money. I'm telling you. That's their money. You've deprived them of it. You're keeping it. You took that $16 billion. You took that $25 million. You just took some more money. You printed money that were coming in the country for Christmas. I was there in March, April, and May, and we didn't see the money. So you're keeping that money for 2023? You will put it in the people's lap. They will eat it and they will vote for who they want to vote for. Keep playing, keep playing. Don't take this country seriously. Don't take Liberia seriously. Just keep playing. You see your friend are going forward. They're not going backwards. They're leading like statesmen. They're leading presidentially. But you're sitting there dancing the buka, doing your shoulder like this. This is shameful. Very shameful. Let me join the other people tonight to talk about some of the things that you should have done and should be doing. Even some of us who are in our layman field and leading people, we take actions. We hold people accountable because we are held accountable. The Liberian people put you there because they thought you were the conduit through which the change could come. And look at what you've done in 5 years, and you're bidding for another 6 years? Are you for real? I'm going to end on that note. We'll be back here on Tuesday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. My name is Volcano Shelton. Thank you so much for being a part of the Issues Room. Join us every Tuesday and Friday, 7 p.m. We're here to discuss the things that matter. Liberia matters the most, and we'll keep talking. People say, where's the solution? This is part of the solution, to enlighten, to tell the people, because some people are blind. Some people can't see. Some people don't have access to radio, television, social media, right? But as we hold these conversations, they sit in the communities, in the town hall corners, in the little enclaves, under the Palawa hut, or wherever they're going to sit, they will have those conversations. So again, I just want to say thank you so much for being there with us. Have a good night, and we'll be back here again on Tuesday, God's willing. Thank you.